So for all 0 viewers that are 3, hold on. For all 3 viewers that are watching, we have on Gabriot, Narninian, Night Angel, and Never Nathaniel in almost alphabetical order. And we are going to discuss today the rankings. Kind of State of the Train has been a while. Like I haven't done it in a long time, but you guys are more like I think Night Angel, you're the one that's kind of in charge here. So you have up already the
Yeah, I have. I made the graphics here, and then yeah, I'm gonna. The ultimate decision is on me.
So what is the different lettering?
I
different
just made.
paths.
I just made it like made it easier to look at since the picture is so small, and so the different path.
Okay. So do we want to go per clan or do we want to like go per tier?
It's a great question.
And do we have an agreement on what the tiers, how we would grade tiers?
Yeah, we should maybe get an agreement there. Like, how do we rate a champ, right? What's our criteria?
Yeah, I would say my criteria is, I was talking a little bit about Gabriot before, but how I would personally classify champions is how will they perform in a worse than average run. So like, not getting exactly what you need.
I also think we're doing champion paths though, right? So we're not talking about the champion as holistically. We're talking about their specific paths. Because it would be different if we're just grading champion as a whole. Because at least for me, like I grade by consistency. And if you have champs that have a single path that's good and 2 trash ones, or like one that's good, one that's average, one that's trash. Right. But I think we're isolating paths, right?
Yeah,
we could. Yeah. I mean, that might be the most unique, because I don't know if anybody's really done it per path.
Yeah.
So we might as well just do it that way, right?
Okay. That sounds good for me.
Okay.
Could be
so we said I think we should look at capability to self-carry.
Yeah.
So how much can you rely on the champion to carry your run?
Right.
Difficulty of synergies. So certain champions have like completely out of control synergies. How likely is it to get those with those champion?
Right.
And then I think Narninian also average. What is the contribution in an average run?
I also think we can give some extra points to ones that flex well. So like in Parade, for example, can just be taken between 1 to 3 and generally get pretty good value. But something like not Repeater, maybe Brawler, really wants to have all 3. Yeah.
It's tough because some champions mix well and some don't.
Right.
But yeah, like,
or maybe aggressive even. Like I don't love aggressive with Stalwart, but I like 3 and aggressive.
Another example is the Firelight. That one I think you absolutely need 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, you could maybe flex Endless in, but that would be the only one. And even then, it's like specific builds.
Right.
Yeah.
I've done it. It's not as powerful as you'd think. It's workable, but
yeah, because the Endless also gives quick, and you kill the enemies before they kill you, so you don't get extinguish. So
yeah.
Well, let's start at the beginning. I would say let's just go through clan by clan.
Yeah.
Okay.
So starting with Hornbreaker Prince, the OG.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Do we want to go with
okay, so okay. Revenge. We can just go like the.
Is that Revenge or Reaper?
The first one, the Revenge one, Revenge and Rage.
So Wrathful.
Yeah. I think I would put this in good. Like I don't think it's like, it's obviously got much weaker in the DLC. I think I guess the low base health is the main issue with it. But there are a lot of solutions.
My positives there, I think, are that it's the best ring 1 typically, unless unless you're fortunate to get a good buff for a brawler. But it's the only one that has survivability ring 1 like kind of built in along with scaling. And it's also the only one that if you don't really use the champ can still give you some value. Like the other ones really need, I feel, support. Exactly. They got to be like the focal point.
This is a little borderline for me, depending on how big your shard count is. Like the higher your shard count, I'd say the worse this gets, because if it can't kill the front unit, then it's pretty bad.
And if it dives to divinity too quickly, it's really bad as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess the situational, this is more of an okay than a good, but it really depends on other factors.
Yeah,
I would say if we go, maybe we can. Sorry, Nathaniel, go ahead.
Yeah, it's fine. So I was just gonna say like that. It's just no. Normally you would want a unit rather than this guy to carry the run. So unless you get some really good supporting spell cards, but otherwise, like in a less than average run, you're really not using the Wrathful Prince for anything, probably just as a meat shield.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Maybe it's okay. I will say like the ceiling, I mean it can obviously with Awoken specifically, it can get really strong if you get spikes, but that's a very specific interaction.
I think as well,
because it's pretty tough to get enough spikes to kill like
you need 20 now. You need 20 spikes minimum, and 20 spikes out of cards means if you're talking not double stack, that's 5 sharpens or 7 cycles of life, and you're never going to get that. Like you're never going to get that by the time that you need to be able to kill those backliners. That's the problem.
Right.
Yep.
Unless you specifically get the Crucible, or you get like I don't know why you would ever take any type of channeler, but if you got a channeler or something like that. But I mean, if you go through clan by clan, I think this is a good way to look at it too. Like combos, there's apart from early game, there's very little synergies with Awoken in terms of like with the champion. The best thing you get is a sweeper, and sweepers are good no matter, sweepers are what they are right now.
Yeah, sweepers are the best.
I could say
the healing doesn't mix.
Pretty good.
Adaptive is okay, but the problem is that if you have Awoken, the best you're going to get is a single strong hit to the front unit.
Right.
Because you can't get, unless you get it out of a cavern event, you can't get multi-strike. You can't afford to take, at least I don't think you can afford to put multi-strike on him. I don't think you can put fragile on him.
Yeah, it's tough if you're going to frontline. I could see if you flexed Brawler though, and like if you had 2 Brawler, 1 Wrathful as a backliner, I could see that because he'll gain armor on Slay. But yeah, not as a frontliner. As a frontliner, even with spikes, I'd be scared because you're only gaining, however, I think full Wrathful just breaks even, right, with 25 damage or whatever. It doesn't even actually gain.
It depends on.
Yeah, this is a decent point. I'll say as a backliner, like every backliner has to get some survivability, so this is a decent like dip, I guess, for that.
Yeah, but as a backliner, he doesn't take damage, which means that the rage doesn't really trigger, so it's kind of useless thing.
Yeah, it's normally when I see Wrathful being like amazing, you could have picked any champion and it would do the same thing. It's because you have imps, or it's because you have like something else that's not related to him. So like that's the biggest problem with Wrathful, I think, across the board, is there's very limited synergy with any starter cards and with any other major clan archetypes. He's just fine. Like
yeah, I think the only way that he may be able to be put as a frontliner is with I'm blanking on names here. The guy that resolves gives you 5 armor.
Steelworker.
Yeah.
Oh, so the ones that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Any unit can do that. Yeah.
I think the one area where actually Wrathful Prince is pretty outstanding is Ember Drain package builds. He's really, really good because you already get rage scaling, and I would say you don't get void binding. You just get perils. You get furnace tap. Then he's awesome because then he's gaining all the armor back. You're furnace tapping him. You get all the rage from all the perils. Like that synergy is awesome, but it's incredibly rare and it's only with one clan.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like compared to any other. I think he's the probably one or two top, excluding Primordium because Primordium is its own thing. Excluding Primordium, I think as a standalone like Ember Drain package user, he's one of the best.
Right.
Because he has good self scaling, and no other champion has such good self scaling that makes use of Ember Drain package.
I guess
so that's like such a narrow case.
The main strength is he is pretty good without cards, and so like he can kill things. He can almost kill things already, whereas a lot of champions need more support.
And certainly to Gabriot's point, he's one of the best champions rings 1 through 3.
Yeah, and
because he's so stable.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, also like to add on to the Ember Drain thought there, normally like the Ember Drain would work with a unit though. Like you would, I mean, he works. Wrathful here works with Ember Drain pretty well, but normally there are better units that you can pick up that can work with Ember Drain even better. So
yeah.
So you might want to pick the units. Like compared to a unit, he's still kind of underwhelming though. In my opinion.
By the way, I invited Sato.
Oh, nice.
I figure anyone that has won a tournament is welcome to join the discussion.
Oh, why are you here?
Why am I here? Yeah.
No, I was talking to
the shade.
No comment. I think okay is fine.
Yeah.
So the next up would be let's go Reaper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Reaper.
I don't like this one at all.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Like this, like it's 6 health, right? Yeah. And the scaling is not that good enough.
No, I mean that's basically it.
Yeah.
I think so. Maybe this is a good. Well, let's talk about. I think he's single-handedly one of the worst champion paths in the game right now. But the question is, what would you change? How would you make it without completely changing the idea of what Reaper does? How would you change it? I have some thoughts, but I'm curious what you guys think.
I mean, trample. I don't know.
I would just give him 10 health in the first rank. I mean,
I still don't think it's enough.
That could make him really good for rings 1 through 3. And then you could maybe flex to Brawler if you find it. And then he's also at that point, if you position him right, he wasn't a liability in the early. I feel like my biggest problem with him is that he's a liability early game, but he's not good enough to justify that risk in the late game. So to me, I'm like, either fix this early game, or the alternative, I think this is where you're going, Nate, is to just make him actually more powerful in the late game and live with that sort of bad early game.
It kind of steps on other clans' toes, but maybe quick, like, because the problem is he's not a tank and he has huge attack numbers, but he can't be in the front.
I would change his trigger to be all units on the floor, and then I think he's awesome.
Like Harvest,
or maybe all demons,
or
either. I mean, we've had long discussions. We've had long discussions about archetypes. Ignoring the whole archetype issue, putting that to the side, I think having his slay trigger affect all units on the floor would be a cool archetype.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, like
so
that
it's branded warrior.
Everybody.
It's branded warrior, but it's permanent damage. It's not rage.
Right.
I think would be cool.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, as of right now, like Branded Warrior is kind of almost better, right? Like it's lower base damage, but
it affects the whole floor, and more importantly, it affects multi-strike units, which you don't get out of the Prince. Like I guess the one nice thing is that his health is so low that you don't care if he's fragile, so you can dump, as much fragile as you want on him.
Right.
But the problem is that even if he has all that even if he has all those multi-strikes, he still does not scale quickly. And the biggest problem for me is like Divinity Fight, where you need the multi-strike. You don't necessarily need it for Seraph. It's good for Seraph, but it's not mandatory. But you need it absolutely for Divinity, and they are like second ring. You have too thick units. They're too thick for him to kill.
So I would put this
or second floor. I mean, second.
I
second
mean,
wave.
Honestly, trash. If there's a trash,
I think it's trashed here.
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree.
Then, like, he doesn't do enough damage to kill things without spells.
And also, like, for Divinity, there are thorns all over the place, and there are not thorns, spikes all over the place, and then there are sweeps. Like, it's just he dies too easily. Even though I think even though they buffed him to 6, 12, and 24 health, I don't think it's enough.
Yeah, because like you're looking at 100 shards is what 15 attack on the top floor for Divinity, and then spikes like every other floor basically. So it's difficult to survive.
It's tough too, because like the Hellhorn to me is so powerful as a clan. So it's like I'd be down. I think there's several Hellhorn cards that could be nerfed, and I think you could even it out by buffing Prince kind of across the board, honestly. Like other than Brawler, but
it's the problem that the Queen's just so much more reliable.
Yep.
In all paths, and I think that's where maybe we talk about this as we get to further clans. But the disparity between champions in the same clan is like really heavy, but you don't see that disparity in terms of the clan itself.
Right.
Like as you said, Hellhorn's amazing, which is why you can play the Prince and still win.
Right.
And it's nothing to do with the Prince. Brawler is an exception. Brawler's good.
Yeah, even with Brawler, I often ignore him though. It's like something better just comes along. But I will say Brawler is the most likely to be a part of my plan.
Yeah.
Sometimes even with the armor from the Angry Path just to keep him alive.
Yeah, I mean the multi-strike is so rare these days, and it's just the only path that gives you multi-strike out of all this here.
Infector and Predator technically.
Oh yeah. That's
they need
right,
multiple points to do it.
Okay, so let's look at Brawler. Good or great?
I think it's good or great.
I tend toward good.
Yeah, I think
that's what I was thinking.
Because it can be pretty tough to make it work ring 1.
Yeah, the low base damage. So yeah, especially before the champ upgrade. Like if you just don't have any cards in your deck that increases damage.
Right.
And there's also the constant struggle between him and still just objectively better units. If you have a sweeper,
yeah,
it's objectively better to put it on a sweeper.
You can't infuse them. You can't infuse them with anything. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and he doesn't. The Brawler doesn't increase health and damage as you level him up. So that's just.
And I guess it is flexible. Like, I would never really want to flex Reaper and Wrathful together, but Brawler is flexible into either one technically, if you needed it, or if you just started one of the others and then you find a brawler, I'll often just switch to brawler at that point. So there's something to be said for that it's so enticing, even with the 1 or 2 ranks, that you just kind of like, I'd rarely want to go full Wrathful or full Reaper. It's like, obviously I'll just take a brawler if I see it. But
yeah.
So it definitely seems to be the most valuable, even at a rank or 2. It also gets the best 3rd rank power spike.
Yeah.
But still, it just doesn't end up being a focal point a lot of the time, even with the 3 points.
Well, at least with him compared to, like, for example, Reaper, like rank 3 brawler he can sustain himself for a few rounds, which is not, like you talk about Tethys, you talk about other, like, at least he's strong, he has scalability, but he's also like not a pushover in terms of health. He has 40 armor base, right?
Yeah, what is
46
that?
effective health, I think.
Right, and you
I
can
need to pull it up.
survive top floor a few hits from the sweeper at that point.
Yeah. There's a very I don't know what I'm gonna do. My computer's like dying. I need to like turn off all my applications.
You don't have an Alienware laptop?
So how many multi-strikes does he get at level 3?
At level 3 strikes 5 times, so 4 multi-strike.
4 multi-strike.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's
That's a lot. Yeah.
Right. And I guess another argument I have is even leading up till that, let's say I do go a full brawler path, usually even like a horned warrior in the first 2 ranks often is better than the rank 2 brawler. So I'm often still just using a banner and not really focusing on brawler at that point, even if my eventual plan is to like go rank 3 and make him the carry, because it's like, even just a horned warrior has the initial multi-strike. You might find another multi-strike, but you can also add like a good infusion or just health or something,
or even Gerd's Goad or whatever. Yeah,
Gerd's Goad, quick, anything like that.
Yeah, I guess that's the main like thing is you can often find a unit that's as good as the Prince, but at least the Prince, you don't have to find it.
So then let's continue with standards, and then we can come back and do exiles after.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So we have the Sentient.
Let's go alphabetical or rejuvenation. Okay, we start with rejuvenation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Explosive.
I think we're going to get some disagreements here.
Yeah, I think it's great. I don't think it's win game by self, but I think it's great. I think that unless you're going for a high shard count run, it still does a lot. You need a solution to kill the boss, but being able to have a sustained plan for the boss whilst clearing out frontliners is very, very good.
My biggest problem with explosive is it's extremely weak to Seraph the Diligence, right?
Yeah.
Removing your cards.
Right, Diligent.
And that's a huge problem. It relies so much on its healing spells that if you lose them, you just lose.
I think that Awoken is one of the better clans for dealing with the patient or the Diligent, though, because it has 2 artifacts that generate spells, and it also has spells that generate spells.
It also has Vine Mother, so there are ways.
Right.
There are ways to deal with it. So I mean, it's not like you lose automatically with Diligent, but it's pretty weak to it. It's also pretty weak to Patient. It can get burst out, and that's the other big problem is. And this is where it's funny that one of the things I started doing was not frontlining with Explosive against Diligent, and then it got a lot better. But then you have to have something else that can frontline, and there's not always good things to frontline with.
Yeah, I think for like the sentient as a whole, though, it really depends on what seraph you're fighting to go which path. Like spikes, you normally don't go spikes against chased, and so you would go either the. I would usually go the explosive against chased, and like spikes would go pretty well into diligent to kill the backlines immediately to get rid of those the trash cards that are added into your deck. Yeah, that it really depends, but I think it's pretty like great.
Yeah, I mean, I see your points. Like, I would put it at least good, and I personally think it's great. But
I think my thoughts are that it's the best path, hands down, if Wormkin is your secondary. Those being able to spam all of those inspires and just getting echoes is really easy. I also think it's pretty good with Stygian for incants, but I think with the other clans, I don't love it. I thought it was overall the most powerful path for a while until I started to like analyze my losses, and a lot of them were explosive with those other clans and it makes sense to me because you're dedicating a lot to make it work and suffering at it's really only giving you defense and damage for that one
I will
thing.
say with Umbra secondary, I guess specifically Umbra secondary, it's probably not the strongest options, and I might go for one of the other paths because Umbra doesn't have good backliners.
Right.
But for the other clans, I would put it at great.
I still don't love it with Melting Remnant either because it's not reformable.
Right.
It is, but it's not. Like, you don't get the value. The value is that you have 30 rejuvenation or 30 regen, and then that's just pummeling units. But so I think Umbra and Melting Remnant both struggle with sentient. The others I think you can manage.
Melting has the harvest units, so yes, it struggles if you don't find a harvest unit, but with one, it's pretty strong.
So we're great.
I would keep it at good. I'd keep it at good.
Okay. Spikes.
I like bristling. Actually, surprisingly, I've been liking bristling a lot. I think it's a drop in your whatever it's going to do. It's similar to like a Titan Sentry. You drop it, it does its thing, and whatever you do on the other floor, you do.
Buys you time to get scaling with your real unit.
Base spikes is enough to kill backliners in Divinity. So I think there's a lot to like about it. Melting Remnant, it's by far the best sentient path because you can reform it and it gets full spikes. So I really like it. I think it's at least on par with Explosive now, in my opinion.
I don't know if I'd agree with that, but I will say it's pretty good for a lot of situations.
Yeah, I think I would just keep it that good. That it works. It's really good in the early game and mid game, and then late game, if you have a lot of shards, everything is buffed a lot. They're not normally like the 40 damage. Is it? I think it's 40 damage. It's not that much. It's only good to kill backlines. But I think it's another. I think one of you guys did a run that said that the 2 ranks in the spikes and then 1 rank in the revenge path. The other
cultivate.
Yeah, that may be the option to go for.
Yeah, as I said, I think it's a good drop and not think about. It does its value. It's Into Chased, it's bad. And Chased, it's not good at all. But
unless it's melting, yeah.
Exactly, unless you're playing melting, and even with melting, it's still not great into Chased because the chased units just don't kill it. They're not strong enough.
Yeah.
So it's hard to get it to die. But apart from that, it's also I think it's I don't know if it's the best. It's up there with Explosive as one of the best Ring 1 champions.
Yeah.
It's great because it kills if you take the artifact in Limbo, it will kill the multi-striker in the first hit, so you don't have to worry about it just slaughtering your pyre or your units. So I don't know. I really like it.
I suppose,
but I wouldn't say it's great or amazing.
Right. I have a tough time ranking it equal or higher than Explosive, mainly because I feel it solves a problem that isn't typically an issue in my Awoken runs, which is killing backliners.
Yep.
Right. Sweep or even Glimmer. Like Glimmer is a pretty common one for me to pick up and just put Piercing or something on it. I do agree though that it gets good value without needing to invest much in it. Like Explosive has to be your focal point if you want it to actually do anything. Whereas Spikes, kind of like you said, you can just put it down and it'll do stuff.
I've typically been using it in 2-floor setups. This is where I think it has a lot of value, because the problem with the sweepers is that they die to spikes. And if you have your sentient, you can keep it alive. You just get I don't know, Unleash the Wildwood or something like that, just to keep it alive. It will kill all of the channelers before they ever reach your other floor. That's where I've been getting the most value out of it.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah,
but I agree. It's got there's a little bit of an overlap in what the units want to do.
Yeah, and also the multi-strikers, they die in one hit.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Temperament becomes a cakewalk with bristling. As long as you can keep it alive, it just kills everything. So
yeah. Okay. Final one. I've made a mistake here. Both of them are R's, but the cultivate revenge trigger.
Yeah, I think this one's pretty bad. Honestly, it's slow.
It's hard to say no to +1 draw, though.
Yeah, but giving up your champion for +1 draw is pretty bad.
Some champions aren't as good as +1 draw.
I think it's just as I said before, like 2 ranks in two ranks in spikes, and then 1 rank just in this just for the draw, and the buff is good to have, but it's not it's nothing. But the draw is very nice.
Awoken has a lot of cards that let you draw. And
you're exactly right.
I've run into an issue where I'm draw capped anyway without it. So I think the problem is it has a lot of health, but the cultivate basically doesn't do anything.
Yes, this is the problem. Cultivate revenge in particular is really bad. And what is really especially egregious is that the other cultivate unit is just hands down better. It's just objectively in all ways, being able to rejuvenate cultivate is just so much better because you can do so many of it and there's no risk. It's just pump out heals and it loves it. So that's the thing for me is it always bothered me that Awoken Hollow is just so much better than the Sentient with cultivate.
And it also means you can't use a channeler or have any morsels or anything like that if you want to actually use the cultivate trigger on your important attacking units.
Yeah.
So that limiting factor is also an issue.
Yep.
So
I think it's bad. I don't think it's trash.
Yeah, I think the card draw is still nice to have, even though you get a lot of card draws in the Awoken class, but getting to 10 cards, it still takes some effort, and I think just for having the extra card draw, I think it's bad.
So
I think the card draw is fine, but we're looking at it as an opportunity cost as well. So you're not getting one of the other two paths to get that card draw, and I think that's my main issue with it.
I might disagree. I think on this one, I actually think it's the best path now, even with the nerfs. And this is only something I've thought recently. I kind of would probably up until the last 2 weeks agree with this, but I think I've seen just the passive value that it provides at just no investment. A rank 3 gets you 160 health tank. The draw is nice, but also the 3/3 cultivate it can be okay. It's at its worst if you have a quick sweeper because you're throwing a lot of that away. But if you're actually getting hit every time, especially on like the divinity fight, and you're able to heal it back, that can be, it's well over like 10/10 in scaling to a backliner, and that can actually be pretty relevant. If you think about it, it's like you can get say there's a wave. Probably the high roll would be like there's a dude that hits 3 times along with like 4 other units that hit you, and then divinity. That's going to be a lot of stats, both health and armor, or sorry, health and damage. And if you have just like something like Unleash the Wildwood, Awake, those type of big heals, that will especially Unleash the Wildwood, the fact that you're getting hit doesn't really matter at that point. And it also basically guarantees relentless, because you're just you're getting so many stats per hit, especially if you go into that relentless at full health. And then I think also just it's the most flexible. Say I started explosive, but it just didn't work out. I can pick up a point of cultivate, and then I get my +1 draw. I don't have to focus on it anymore, and it's like basically what you want out of a Wildwood. I forget the name of it, but the Chandler that gives you draw. Mm-hmm. The nice thing is it sticks, unlike that thing, which actually requires like babying to keep in play or upgrades. Whereas the high health sentient won't die for most of the fight. But like you said, sometimes you are just already drawing a full hand, and in that case, it's not providing you much. But I feel like most of the time, I'm still not drawing a full hand, especially if it's restores where I don't have root seeds. So that's my cultivating argument. But I'd be fine with it still ranked low, because this is only recently I've kind of thought this. It is, for the record, though, my most winning path of Sentient.
I think it's good at like rank 1 or even 2, but I don't think it's that. I mean, if you're arguing that like having this cultivate at rank 3, it's like it's the stat buff, it's good, but the other paths like would achieve similar effects, and normally by the time this guy gets to rank 3, you would still have some other spells that would buff your backline sweepers or multi-strikers, because just relying on this guy to buff your units, it's not very reliable.
The other part too is that once it gets low enough, once the sentient gets low enough, it starts buffing itself, and that's like really feels bad. But yeah, I think it's definitely the best case for well, maybe not the best case. It's one of the better cases for like Unleash is also pretty good with it, because with Unleash, you're always bringing it back to that like massive health pool. Right. And yeah, so I don't know. I think I need to play more with it. I have not been able to reliably get it to support a unit without having to have all the support I would have anyway. So you still have razor sharp edges. I still have all like the other stuff too. But I could play around. I need to play around with it more and see.
Yeah, it's a tough one to evaluate because there's so much that can happen with an Awoken run. It's like, are you going to have quick units? Are you going to have a bunch of heals? You never know for sure.
Yes, certainly the pairing with Animus of Will is fantastic.
Right. Yeah, that's the top, I think.
So then moving forward, Tethys.
We'll
Tethys.
start with
Tethys.
Okay. Let's start with some other, not this one. Let's start with what's that? Frostbite.
It's bad.
I prefer it ring 1 in a general sense, but beyond that, it doesn't do anything anymore.
It's really good until Divinity. It's still really good against Seraph. It's still really good against all the other fights.
Right.
It is trash against Divinity. And it sucks because it is a really good... It's not even a win condition. It's a relentless condition. Like, it's a really good relentless condition. And if you can get it to survive until Divinity, it's fine. Right. The biggest problem was, for me, is Tethys was always a major part of, like, clearing.
Yep.
And you can't use it to clear. And that it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating because I love the Frostbite archetype, and it is so... You have to have such a specific Frostbite build to ever make it work now with Divinity.
Right.
And
even some relentlesses, it's not enough. Even before Divinity, like some of the ones that just like cut through your units like butter, like
or have sweep or have spikes.
Yeah, sweep, spikes, any of that is going to screw you.
So this is where it's really coming into play. Like, we're talking about specifically high covenant levels versus Divinity. Like, so outside of that context, this could be a really good champion. But
yes,
it was my favorite free DLC.
Context, yeah.
Well, so we're talking about champion path. Tethys, we'll get there. Tethys has a good upgrade path, but
yeah.
But you're right. Like if you're a newer player and your covenant like just growing or rolling up covenants, Tethys with Frostbite is still very, very good.
Yeah.
And it'll still beat your Seraph the Temperant. It'll still beat your Seraph the Patient. It'll still beat those champions or those bosses. But it is just absolutely atrocious against Divinity, and that is just it makes me sad because I really like the archetype, and I'm sad that it doesn't work as reliably.
Yeah,
it's still like even
yeah,
the double the Frostbite spell, like it
does not matter. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Hoarfrost Effigy doesn't work unless you do that really weird ass damage shield stacking nonsense that you can do, but
yeah. And I still think it's not completely to I think it has a big edge over the others for ring 1, specifically in the case where you don't have like a Crystallis or Ice Storm or Crypt Builder.
Right.
Like you can have some really rough ring 1s if it's Conduit and Spell Weakness, and you just get offered nothing. Right,
Crash.
Like no actual,
You get a Maul's Mage, you get some other stupid unit. You're playing with drags, and you're just hating life.
You get spell weakness 1,
energy siphon. That's
energy
my
siphon, 2 energy siphons, 2 like other
I think
units.
energy siphon needs to become uncommon.
Yeah,
because it's terrible as a common card.
Oh, it's so sad to get it in your ring 1. Yeah, ring 1's so sad. Unless you get some other thing, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
unless you're speed running, then it's great.
It's great.
It's great.
I would put Frostbite as bad.
Yeah.
We're mainly talking about Covenant 25 and Divinity. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I'd say it's above the Reaper because Relentless it does more damage, right? Like it's like you have to get it to survive, you have to do stuff, but it does stuff if you do it.
I've never breathed a sigh of relief to see Reaper. I've at least breathed a sigh of relief to see Chillwind like ring 1 to get me out of an energy siphon like situation.
Yeah, and also the Frostbite sticks around, so you can play bottom floor, mid floor, and then you can that damage will still happen even if you don't have units, or even if you let the enemy go to your pyre will take less damage because of the Frostbite. So yeah, still good.
Next,
spell weakness.
Ugh.
Mixed feelings.
That's Reaper tier for me.
I don't have mixed feelings on this. Whoa! What?
I don't actually think it's still better than Reaper, but I would still put it as bad.
Yeah.
I think it's still. I really I have like this. I had this I don't know if you guys remember. I had this very good the spell weakness run in that tournament. So
I remember it.
Yeah,
you beat me with it.
it's
I mean, you can have. It's the ceiling is pretty good, but like the problem is, I would say the spell weakness part is
the sweep.
Very hard to make it relevant.
The sweep
The sweep is okay, but the thing is, Stygian has sweep units that are way better. Well, I mean that are better. They're bigger, but you can infuse them with health, scaling, and damage scaling, and you can't do that with Tethys. You can do it with like buffs or whatever, but you can't. So it's a built-in sweep, which is nice because you really want to have a sweep, but it's not built-in sustain. And the spell weakness, I think, is very hard to use. I think it's rare that you can do like, I will stack the middle floor with spell weakness and I will play a big spell on the top floor. I don't think that's easy to do strategy anymore.
I think it still works pretty well up until Divinity. I think it becomes tough at Divinity unless you have the right cards to support it. Because I
have to interrupt really quick. My computer's about to die.
Oh.
I need to switch to using my mobile. Is one of you recording this as well?
Yeah, I'm recording it.
Yeah, I got it as well.
Would someone be willing to send me a copy at the end?
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be helpful. And I apologize to people that are watching on stream. I have to end the stream because I didn't bring my charger with me when I left, and I am at 2%. So I'm gonna end. Which one of you is currently streaming?
Me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you stream under Night Angel, correct?
Yeah. No, I'm not streaming on Twitch. I'm streaming the
on
thing
YouTube
on Discord.
On Discord, okay.
No.
Is anyone streaming on Twitch right now that I can send people to?
I could go live if no one else wants it. I could go live.
Quickly.
All right. Going live.
Go live.
Just gonna say state of the train.
And then I'll switch over to the mobile. Sorry, I want you to complete your thought. I just didn't want the computer to die in the middle of it. And
feel free to join on your phone too, if that works.
Yeah, that's my plan. I'm going to join on the phone and continue the discussion. I don't want to leave the discussion. I just can't continue.
Okay.
Otherwise, all right. Are you live?
I should be live on Twitch. Yep, should be live on Twitch.
Okay, then sending you guys over. Thanks for watching me so far. We'll continue the discussion on Gabriot's stream. Okay, then let me just get my mobile set up. It's also good. It means I don't have to sit like this the rest of the time.
Nice. I see the raid. Nice. I generally actually think it crushes the game up until Divinity for when I do it. It always feels really powerful. It's I usually go bottom floor with it. Maybe that's why I'm not doing super well on Divinity with it, because the problem is bottom floor against Divinity, really hard to get through the units and actually get your spell weakness hit off. And then it also gains the spell shield, which makes even sometimes, say you survive everything, if you don't have a good piercing finisher. Because there are some times you just don't get piercing spell in the offered divinity upgrades. So I am willing to concede it actually might be a good path. I just haven't had a good experience with it yet. I mean, I will say I see, like, for instance, you, Night Angel, I see you do pretty consistently with it. So I'm definitely willing to be swayed on it. I just haven't had a great experience with it myself.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say my favorite archetype right now with Stygian is spell weakness, but it's more flavor than it is because it's consistent. It's just I really like seeing big numbers, and it's one of the best ways to see big numbers in this game. So
yeah, the spell weakness Stygian, it's really good, but like it. Whenever I play it, I get really anxious because you don't really know that you're gonna consistently draw your big spells that can kill the enemies. You can draft all the good spells that you that are offered, and you have them in your deck, but you're not guaranteed to draw the spells whenever you need them. So it's good, but it's still
that's the main problem I have is like because incant is pretty strong and you kind of need to kill so many units that using spells to kill units is really rough, especially with spell shield.
And the sweeper incant infuse into sweeper, it's I guess the more common strategy, or just basically, or just the Gorgon.
That's pretty good too.
Yeah, I guess that's another thing too. Is like as good as Conduit. I'm just gonna assume we're gonna rank Conduit pretty well, but Conduit typically may or may not have any reason to go additional points into Conduit. Maybe 2, rarely 3, sometimes 3. But then at that point, it's like Sweeper probably is generally better than Frostbite to pivot to.
The problem,
it depends, right?
the other problem with the sweep is that you want to play the spells in your Conduit floor, and it's pre-weakness. Yeah, that's the thing is like, I do like going all in on Conduit because I think that not having to spell reduce or rely on offerings for the offering cards is so strong. Getting plus 30s and getting plus 10 piercings on either
or even spell chain. Even spell chain is pretty good.
Yes.
Spell chain. Yep. Spell
chain
crit builder.
I just think that we are not talking about Conduit yet, but in terms of like sweep and spell weakness, I really like the archetype. I don't to the same points you guys already mentioned. I don't think it's reliable, mostly because so much of the spells are front-ended. They're hit front units or they're hit random units, and that always feels bad. Like the worst is when you're playing against Divinity and Seraph, and you keep randomly hitting, like you use your Ice Tornado and you're hitting Divinity, you're hitting Seraph. It's really frustrating. So I think reliability is a big problem. I do think it's one of the, it's, in my opinion, excluding infinites, it is the most reliable way to get flying kills. Absolutely. But the biggest problem is it's just so unreliable, and especially early game, it's really sad if you start with the wrong starting cards and just don't get offered really good spell damage cards. But one thing that is like by late game, I think once I've gotten past ring 6, I typically win with the path almost every time. So if I can get to ring 6, I don't have problems. I think the biggest problem is it's so bad early game and it's so bad mid game. But by then you will have had, like, you're going to get offered something. You're going to get something by then that can rely on the spell damage, and then you just get hold over, and then it's fine, in my opinion. So I think it's one of the strongest finishing champions. I think it's one of the absolute worst early game champions in the game. But
yeah,
or champion paths.
And I think even for the Divinity fight, it's almost impossible to kill Divinity on flying kill because you need to get through all the front line, all the minions first, and then you can use your spell damage on the Divinity himself to actually proc the spell weakness, and you don't.
You're totally right, and the worst part of it is that it only procs on the floor where you are.
Yeah.
That's what makes it terrible with Divinity.
Yeah, and
totally
you
right.
can't use like random targeting spells like Ice Tornado because you might have one random shot that hits the last Divinity and procs all your spell weakness that you've accumulated, and you're very sad afterwards because you just lost all that spell weakness.
Yes, I think sticking it in bad works for me. I don't think it's trash tier. I think that, like, are you going to carry with it? Not often, but certainly more than you would Reaper.
Yeah, I think though it's maybe. Yeah, I think it's the same tier, similar. I mean, they all both these they have their advantages and disadvantages, good and bad about them. All right.
So Conduit.
That is very strong.
Yeah.
I think Conduit can lose ring 1.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever lost a Conduit if I've gotten past the first 3 rings.
I mean, I guess the main thing is it doesn't win with Frozen Lances, right?
Certainly not. No.
Yeah. And you could just never be offered a spell. I mean, and I've had it happen, and it's caused me to lose, but it's very rare that happens.
Yeah, so I think Energy Siphon, if that's your common, is the worst time to get stuck with Conduit ring 1. And you can still get through it. It's just you have to. It's unfun, right? You basically don't take any shards, probably. Maybe if it's boons, you take boons, but even then you're buffing up the boss. That could be iffy, and you probably don't take the trial. So just 2 unfun things to have happen, right? But if you don't take either of those, you'll probably get through it. I mean, they've kind of designed the game as such, right? That you can't just flat out lose like that. But
and you have, I think if you do that, then like you're the most likely to take power damage. Like most likely to take.
Right, yeah, even then you're probably not killing the boss. Like if it's like trying to think, like
you literally have to get Helical Crystallis or your Ice Tornado Helical Crystallis, or you will take fire damage.
Right, exactly.
It's 100% because
or Crypt Builder.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so it's one of the 3. You have to get one of the big 3s, or you just lose. Right. Not lose, but you lose Pyre health. Yeah. And if you take the trial and you take the shards, you will actually lose ring 1. But
yeah,
once you get past ring 3, you auto pick anything that does lots of damage, and you auto pick anything that incants, and then you just roll. And I don't know. It's really, really strong. Turns out being able to play spells for free is really strong.
Yeah.
Or go ahead, Nate.
I was just gonna say, like I mentioned this before, but the fact that it allows you to just dump damage onto your already damaging spells is what makes it over the top.
Right. And spell chains and whatnot.
Spell chains and yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's also the only time I like Stygian Spear.
Yep.
Because it's now an actual really good incant trigger. I typically don't like the spear otherwise. I hate it probably the most of any common, especially when it's like a secondary, if Stygian's my secondary clan. Makes and it really like you kind of said it Conduit really enables incant to be insane. If you get spear secondary, incant can be actually kind of iffy sometimes. It's still workable, but you now have to really focus on getting a deck that can actually utilize the incant properly.
So I would not. I think I'd put it at great. I still don't think it can win the game by itself.
I agree.
Right.
I mean, obviously, you need spells and incant units, and you don't always get those.
Right.
Yeah.
And it has that potentially weak ring 1.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite rare. Yeah, you do need the damage spells for it to actually pick this path on the first offer. So like you would probably pick the other 2 paths if you don't have a good damage spell. So yeah, really bad. Not too bad, but like really not very good early game and the first 3 rings, and then gets really bad, really a lot better later on.
So then,
definitely the best of everything we've looked at so far, I think, is the conduit path.
And I think what we're going to see as a trend is that OGs are a little bit underpowered in general compared to. But anyway, we'll get there.
Yeah.
Rector Flicker.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Which
okay.
Speaking of which,
Penumbra.
Oh no, that's right. Sorry, I skipped. Yeah, Penumbra.
Right. Penumbra.
Which path is that?
This is the space for pips.
Yeah.
The best path.
The best path. The usable path.
Yep.
I still don't think it's the great path.
I think it's good. It's good.
It's good. Yeah, good. Good is fine.
I leaned more toward okay.
I'm in the
really
there too.
Yeah.
I so disagree. I think it's really good.
I think it's really good. It gives you space so that you can play your units on the same floor, and then that's the.
I mean, it takes all 3 levels to do that.
Right. I think that's my main argument. It's like ring 1. It's good, but I don't know.
Ring 1, it can carry. It can carry you a bit, right? Like because it's got big numbers and you can fit morsels and stuff.
Yeah.
It drops off pretty quickly though, as far as being a solo unit.
I think you guys are underestimating through the entire mid game having an extra 100 damage on a floor. Like no, it's not 100. It's 60. An extra 60 damage on a floor, which is a lot. There's just 60 damage on a floor for 0 cost for the rest of the run. I think it's really good. It doesn't usually die so quickly because it's usually in the back. You don't usually put it in, at least I don't usually put it in the front. It's not my frontliner. So you have something like Shadow Eater and use Shadow Eater to clear. You can fit a Shadow Eater, you can fit Architect, and you can fit a morsel something and then morsels all on one floor. I think it's really, really strong. But I mean, I also overstack a lot, so that it's part of my thing is I like having tons of really strong units on a floor.
Right.
But I mean, maybe I should say it this way. I think that in general, when you get to rank 3, the fact that it creates a pip space is it's similar to Cultivate, but it's attached to a much better unit than the Cultivate, I think. So it's the draw, but instead of draw, it's an extra pip space on a floor. You just get an extra one for free. It's an artifact. It's a boss artifact you get for free, but it's attached to a unit that actually does a lot of damage, which I like. So I don't know. I have really, really good track record with Architect. I don't know that it's necessarily because of Architect, but
yeah, that's my main thing. Is I don't think it's like whenever I win with Architect, I don't think it's because I have Architect.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I could see the argument for good. I'd almost lean toward it. I still feel on the okay side though. Like its ceiling just isn't there for me, I guess. But definitely has a floor, right? This one's, I think, like maybe, and I'm also open to. I don't really ever sacrifice it or anything like that. Maybe that could also be something that makes it better. I don't know if anyone
play it and sack it.
Right. Then you have a bunch of extra space, right? To really build a crazy floor.
That might be a little too slow, but it's an interesting thought.
Right. Or maybe even ascend it off or something, or descend it off. I don't know.
I had it run before that. So you can put intrinsic on the sacking, and then you have on the sacking that gives you 3 morsels, that card, and then you have Shadow Siege, so you can play it, you sack it, and you play your Shadow Siege on that floor, and then and I think you would also need like some ways to gain Ember. I think I had like the play 2 units that gives you 3 Ember, 2 Ember or 3 Ember.
So it's a fancy Space Prism.
Yeah, it's that's just a very rare combo, but like normally it's more of a supporting card that 100 damage in the late game and 60 damage in the mid game. It's still relevant, I think.
Yeah.
The last point that I'll make is I actually think it's a really, really, really good Ember Drain package champion. I think it's better than Monstrous Ember Drain package, because the thing with Monstrous is the trample becomes less valuable the more multi-strike you have. And the whole problem is with Monstrous, how do you keep it alive? Like, unless you specifically have Void Binding, it's going to die. So for me, I love Architect because it doesn't matter. You can actually put it with Crucible Warden and literally just have something up front that takes all the hits, and you dump all of your damage, all of your multi-strike onto a unit that's just already starting with a ton of raw damage. It's similar to me with like Titan Channel, but yeah, like I think, but I don't know, that, as I said, I have a really good track record with it, but I could also see it. That's why I say I think it's probably good. I would not put it on okay, because I think it's me personally, but if the group thinks, then I'm okay to put it on okay. I wouldn't definitely not put it lower than that.
It's border for me on good and okay. So
I think it's hands down the best Penumbra path. I just don't know. Yeah. It's hard for me to really say I would prefer it over Brawler.
The problem is that Hellhorn's just a better clan than Umbra. Right. So you're not only having Penumbra, you have Umbra. And Umbra, it's funny because Umbra's not a bad clan. Umbra is an incredibly swingy clan. Yes, you get the right combo, and it's out of this world.
Right.
But you just don't get those reliably.
Yeah. Yeah, Umbra is like, there's a few cards, you find them, you will have an easy run. If you don't, you're going to have a nightmare.
Yeah, another argument that I would put this guy on good is that you can just play him as the support that he is, and then just gives you the space that you require and the damage, and you don't need to take other Umbra cards. You can just use your ally clan cards instead. For like, if you're just going for Melting Remnant, let's say the harvest units, you can just play them in the front, and then or you have another good as a robot or another gorge unit, and then you have just a lot of space for morsels as well to just gorge. Just you don't need to worry about space at all. And normally with Umbra, you do somewhat need to worry a little bit about the space that would be normally taken up by morsels.
I suppose I could also agree that it seems significantly better than Wrathful Prince. So
And I also consider so certain archetypes are amazing with it. Imp archetype is fantastic. You just get extra space. It's an extra just unit that can get buffed. The Transcendent combo, while not necessarily needed, is hilarious. And so, I mean, there's some stuff like that. Melting Remnant, also quite good. You can reform it, bring it back, add more space. Yeah. So there's some nutty things you can do with it, but those are super edge cases.
Right.
So this is why I would say, I would say borderline. I'd say it leans on good. I would definitely put it. Would I want it more than Brawler? That's a good question. I really don't know. In some cases, Brawler's really not good. There are times when Brawler's just
useless.
Yes. And certainly, if it's ring 1, I would have Architect over Brawler every time. That means I can fit 3 Train Stewards on the same floor as my champion. And that's going to kill most bosses. So I don't know. I'm fighting really hard for this. Surprisingly, I don't know that I didn't realize I was so emotionally connected to Architect.
I like it
until this moment.
I like the fight. You're swaying me. And I will say this: Penumbra will never not do nothing for me. It's triple negative. Yeah, triple negative. Whereas Brawler will definitely do nothing for me.
Yes. Let's leave it in good. We can decide to move it later. I'm fine with it being an edge case, and then depending we can.
Good. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's good. It's the thing is, unlike other paths in the Penumbra one, it's gonna have value.
Yeah, no matter what.
No matter what.
All right.
We're looking at Gorge.
George the Penumbra.
George.
No, thank you.
The only positive I'll give it 2 positives. Ring 1, probably the strongest of the Penumbra paths, but that it's not like the other paths aren't weak either, Ring 1, so it's almost like it doesn't matter. And then the other thing is, if you happen to get Umbra Stone or Furnace Tap, then you're happy. It's pretty crazy scaling if you have a nice morsel build, but like we said, that's the swinginess of Umbra. If you don't find those 2 cards, the best it's going to get you is 1 kill a wave, and that's
the thing is,
having to dedicate resources.
I compare it to Morsel Maid, and I'm finding myself if I prefer Morsel Maid to this, then that's a problem because it's a champion.
I prefer Shadow Eater to it.
Shadow Eater is my favorite Umbra unit, actually, even more than Morsel Maid, I'd say.
What's the worst part about, and this is coming to it's a very similar argument like Frostbite Tethys.
Yeah.
Not as heavy, but morsel builds are kind of shit because you can't play them in the top floor unless you specifically get an artifact that protects your morsels. You just can't.
Or Feast or Shroud Spike, basically.
Yeah, exactly. You have to get a specific combo or morsel builds don't work.
Right.
Except for Shadow Eater on the bottom floor, which does work and prevents all of the problems of all the other morsel builds. So it's that makes it tough for me.
Or you get Morsel Maid. Morsel Maid soft.
Or you get Morsel Maid. Yeah, I mean that's what I'm so you have Shadow Eater, Morsel Maid, and I would even chalk Robot on Robot in there in the mix. You can do middle floor Robot on Robot and it can do it. But like your all your other Gorge builds, they don't work. And especially here, it just doesn't work. You can't play him on the bottom floor because he dies to the first floor. And you can't play him on the top floor unless you specifically have that artifact. And even if you do, you have to have that artifact, you have to have Furnace Tap, you have to have something else. And then if you get, as you said, Narninian, if you get something better, you just don't feed him. You toss him on the floor and you just feed your main dude.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's like I feel like the builds that it would be good in, I'd almost rather just get a Shadow Eater and have it be better, right?
Yeah.
Now I should gorging a ton, right?
I think we should put the same caveat like we did to some like Wrathful Prince. If you aren't going for divinity, it's still really good. It's a very, very good against Seraph unit. It is a very, very bad divinity unit. Frostbite Tethys, I guess, was the other one we talked about. Yeah, it's
right.
It's got an incredible ceiling, but
yes.
like if you're just trying to win, who cares about your ceiling?
Yeah, there are a lot of like the good runs or crazy runs on Reddit that I've seen, but they're just very fringe cases. Don't get it very often.
So then I put it. I don't think it's trash, but I think bad.
I agree with bad. The main reason it's bad is because morsels are so bad, and it's nothing.
Yes.
Like I think the scaling is fine. If somehow maybe if the path gave some sort of inherent survivability to morsels, it would be like a good path, but it doesn't.
That would be an interesting change for it too. Is if it like added health to morsels, then I could see it being better.
Yeah, that would be actually really good. Chat brought up a good point. There is also you can daze divinity, which would allow top floor setup. But
there's no inherent daze in Umbra. You'd have to get it from your secondary clan. So you specifically need one of the two, or three, I guess, or a cavern event. But no, that's also true.
Yeah.
Then we have monstrous.
Here it is.
Better than George.
I'd say
worse than Architect.
Has some upside that is similar to the upside of. It's not as good, but the spikes path of Sentient, like you can use it to kind of weaken stuff while you set up.
Or goal keep. You can use it the other way around too. You can have it goal keep and prevent things from hitting your pyre.
And it's not as good at it, I'd say, because its base numbers are kind of like all the champion paths that rely on huge base numbers are rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except for
Titan Channel,
Yeah.
Well, the other argument against it is that you can't have a rank 3 unless you take some sort of space.
Right.
Yeah.
Either you have to get Mind Jacks, or you have to have Space Prism, or you have to have an artifact.
And with Space Prism, like you have to have intrinsic.
And then you're playing Space Prism to play down a champion that's not that great.
Yeah.
I think the way I almost look at it is if I get offered Architect, I'll take it. Like I can't think of too many reasons for me to take first rank. I don't know that I would ever choose the others over Architect, and unless I just really thought I was bored of Architect.
If I got Perils and Void Binding as my starting cards, I would go Monstrous.
I could see that.
Yeah.
But that would be it.
Hunt for holdover.
Still, like, and fringe cases where I have a really strong morsel based what you call it, eater, what's the path, the glutton path, I might take it just because I had never found a trample book.
Right, that's true. Yeah, you could flex into that from Gorge.
You can also flex into it for Architect. It's not bad.
True. Yeah,
because then you have a one capacity unit that has trample, which is always good.
Yeah, it's like in the situation where Ring 1 you're offered Gorge and Trample, I feel like I typically actually go to Gorge more. Really depends on the starting artifacts, but I feel like I'll get better stats out of the Gorge for at least Ring 1. It's tough though. I mean, Trample can deal pretty well with most Ring 1s as well. I just feel like I'm basically guaranteed to beat the boss if I go Gorge, whereas not necessarily true with Trample. So, but at the same time, if I can, especially like against clergymen, I definitely would be better off with Trample. But I don't know. I feel like often, especially if I take like Trial that does something, Trample can get a little bit overrun Ring 1 sometimes.
And Spikes especially can be really brutal on Trample.
Right.
So I'll say that I like it better than the Glutton path, but it's mainly because of the situational cases where it's a really good utility. But it's not every run that's the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's even I mentioned like I sometimes goal keep. To be honest, most of the time when I'm in those runs, that works up until like ring 5, and then even at like you go to max rank and you can put it on a floor, nothing survives. If I have a build that's going to defeat divinity, it's not going to leak.
Right.
And that's just typically how it goes. And so you just end up having a penumbra up there to just get killed by divinity.
Right. Yeah. And get you ember drained turn 2.
And I think it's just I would put it at bad. Just with the gorge.
Yeah, I would put it at bad, but it's above the gorge path. Like,
yeah, but it's very marginal.
Yeah, we'll put it like that. Just
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Moving on.
We're moving on to Rector Flicker.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's funny is this is one where this has changed wildly for me over time during the DLC.
Yep, 100% agree. All 3 paths too.
Yes,
all 3 paths have changed for me.
Yes,
I'd be interested to hear your thoughts because I haven't played in a while. Played it in a while, so.
Yeah, for me only 2. Like I still don't like the burnout path, but
there's a case for it. But anyway, we can talk about that. What are we starting with?
We're starting with Harvest.
I think Harvest is not as good as it used to be.
I agree with that. I still think it's pretty good. It's just really slow to scale offensively. So I think defensively, it's good. And sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes it's not what you need, though.
It's best with I think it's the best frontliner with a sweeper build, hands down. Like you have a sweeper build and you can scale your sweepers. You want Rector Flicker because you're just going to have the biggest tank in the world. Outside of that context, even with like, and this is like, I had so many runs in a row that were Accumulator, Harvest Baron, infused with Harvest Baron, and just losing over and over and over again with these builds.
Ring 5.
Yeah, Ring 5 and Ring 7 and Divinity.
Tough to get going, yeah.
It's really hard to scale fast enough without some type of massive boost.
Yeah, it's tough. Like Harvest is a really tough one for me to evaluate. Like the health scaling is insane. You will not lose Relentless as long as you get through the waves, but that's the problem, right? Getting through the waves, it doesn't provide much for that. I mean, it provides probably the best tank in the game, arguably. But the damage scaling isn't super fast, especially in those early ranks. But and I almost feel it's redundant with a lot of kind of defensive melting options like stealth. You have 2 really good ways to get stealth. You have Dazed, 2 pretty good Dazed cards, and you just have Reform. Sometimes you don't always have it with Drag variant, Melting Remnant, but I guess one thing I will say is it's pretty good early rings. It gives the dregs, similar to Dark Calling, it makes the dregs a pretty good card, which I hate dregs otherwise. It also is a pretty good flex, I think, into Dark Calling, because Dark Calling additional ranks might not get you much, but it can make it easier to play Dark Calling on a bottom floor, for example, because you're getting those harvests, and now it gets survivability, so that even if your dudes get taken out, it'll still survive. And also just eventually get even 2 ranks of Harvest and 1 of Dark Calling, you can get him scaled up pretty good on health. And then for Relentless, you can just stick your now super scaled up dudes behind him, like drafts or whatnot. So it's like, I feel like it is good. And it's also worth noting that there's some players that just do really good with Harvest. Like I've seen some pretty good win rates come across with it. So it's hard for me to say it's bad or even okay, but I tend to lean toward okay. okay or good is where I would put it.
I think it's okay.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
My personal experience is I have the best win rate with it, so I guess I have a different experience to you guys, but I mean, it's like on its own. I guess the times where a lot of times it ends up not being the key to the victory though. So it's just a decent unit on its own. I'm okay with okay.
Yeah. I could see arguments for good, even great, honestly. It's a tough one. It's a tough one for me to evaluate. I don't like there's kind of two different forms of harvest, right? There's the one where you go dark calling 1, harvest 2, but then there's just all in harvest rector, right? Both are pretty good in the right situation. The right situation comes up decently often. I'd be fine putting it good at least, but I don't know. Good, great, or okay all makes sense to me.
I think it's just too slow, and sometimes you can't. You don't have enough damage to kill the enemies, the waves, for the harvest to trigger. So there's that, and then you sometimes you leak some enemies, and then you have to kill them with spells, and then you lose the harvest for those enemies. Are we good? Okay. Let's move on.
Burn bright.
Burn bright.
This one's gone down for me.
Same.
It just it's okay, but I don't know. It doesn't. It's just not as enticing as the others to me. It's not going to provide as much typically.
Its stats are too low for what it does.
Right, and it doesn't really, I don't know. It's not bad. I could never call it bad. It's obviously bad if you don't have Reform or Burnout extension, but it's hard for me if I'm offered Harvest or Dark Calling to ever pick Burnout over it anymore, even if I do have like Molded or Purifying Cleanse or something in my opener. Dark Calling, Harvest, I think are going to get me more.
I really like it as a stat boost to Dark Calling. One off, just getting plus 50/50, I find to be really valuable. Or no, it's not 50/50 now. It got nerfed. It's like 45/45, but still, just adding extra stats on a Dark Calling so it's a little bit more survivable.
Right.
I do that, but only in builds where I have a reliable way to either bring it, not even bring it back, a reliable way to extend its burnout.
Right.
Yeah, that's the main issue.
Yeah.
Like you have to include that in your deck. So I think it's bad if that's the only reason you have those cards in your deck. But if you are doing something else with it, then it makes sense.
Yeah, the thing is another. I mean, a good thing about it is that if you're running burnout, for example, Paraffin Enforcer is really good with that. So, normally burnout extension. Normally you would usually the burnout extension cards are available. But in some cases, in some runs, you don't get burnout extension cards. So